I'm standing here at the Holy Broadcast Arena, found on the planet of Pandora, way off in the galaxies of the Borderlands. And I wanted to come here today and do a video because this broadcast center has a fascinating work of art. It is a large glass display, stained glass, art glass, whatever you want to call it. We have it right here in the entrance, the atrium lobby, if you will. And so let's take a second here and just see what we're looking at. As you can tell outside, it is dark, so this is obviously backlit with a light panel behind the glass or something of the sort. And we see a largely warm color palette going on. A lot of yellows, a lot of reds, accentuated by the deep purples and the darks going on here. Now, as far as subject matter, what do we see? Well, we see a group of individuals praising, almost idolizing, another pair of individuals above them. These are in fact the so-called twin gods, Troy and Tyrene Calypso. They are self-proclaimed messiahs of the bandit clans of Pandora, a people without any sort of rule of law or sense of peace. They embrace chaos and they enjoy mayhem. And so that's kind of the whole thing going on. And these two twin gods, they saw an opportunity to both capitalize and to claim power. And so naturally, I'm sure they had this window display commissioned on their behalf to make them look good and to show off their messianic look as they give themselves so readily. As far as subject matter goes, that's about all there is to say. So let's look at the more aesthetic themes and elements of the window, see how good of a stained glass window it actually is, if it would actually be viable anywhere else. Maybe theorize how difficult this might have been to make. I've got my robot here, I'm sorry for the noise that he's making, but I'm going to pull out my camera and take some stills so we can get a closer look at this thing here. Okay, so here we go. The panel at large in full view. So I've got my little cursor here to sort of be a pointer. Let's start off with the colors. So if you've ever visited Pandora, you'll know it's very much a sort of wasteland planet. A lot of deserts, a lot of barren wastes that just have not really anything going on. And for some reason, those wastelands are always deserts. And so there's a lot of yellows, a lot of browns, a few reds here and there that go on. The purple is an interesting call to the priceless element that was discovered many years ago with the opening of the first vault on the planet. And that spawned the element known as iridium, which is a very powerful element, and it's also purple. So that's probably what that means. They really lean into the whole "this is glass" kind of motif with this window. We see a lot of let's see, is there an easy way to... Yeah, I can just fly in here. But we see these really sporadic lines that almost look like the glass itself is broken, which in some cases works pretty well in the stained glass window. Other cases, it's not exactly what you would want. You kind of want a window that looks uniform and coherent, but with the chaos and the mayhem that this window is meant to represent, I think it works out nicely. Let's take a closer look in at this glass. We can see by these strokes, it is obviously painted, something that stained glass has been known to accommodate for centuries. We have a lot of these sort of amateur-looking paint strokes. Down here, it almost kind of looks like a crayon was used. But when you back out, again, it gives the hole some much-needed texture that makes this window feel a lot more alive and a lot more active. We have the blue here, and the only semblance of blue in this whole window to sort of give it a very much needed and yet very rare tone temperature among the color palette. Now the blue, if you don't know much about the sirens of the Borderlands, they have these blue tattoos for some reason that glow, and so that's what that's meant to represent. We have some motifs of bullets up here because the bandits, they love their guns. But I don't think the bullets ever get that big. That might be a little not to scale. We have this arch here at the crest of the window. That arch obviously represents the vaults themselves of Borderlands, where treasure hunters from all around the universe come in hopes for seeking glory, fame, and wealth. Many times in vain, but that's a story for another time. Down here, we have some interesting, almost formless, default humanoid shapes. They're all bald. They're all, I guess, androgynous in a way. You can't tell whether they are male or female. And they're all offering their hands, for some reason. Now, some of these hands don't really look very realistic. I mean, you take a look at this hand. It's really big, so the perspective there is a bit off, and I don't think that's... over here, and there's not really anything to talk about over there. So let's talk about this as a stained glass window itself. Now, professionally, I actually work in stained glass, and I wanted to take take this moment to give you a little idea of how stained glass works. So let's find a joint. How about right here on Troy's coat? So the way stained glass works, every single bit of this that is separated by these black lines, that is going to be an individual piece of glass. These black lines are comprised of lead. You would fit in the glass into the piece of lead, bend the lead because it is a rather malleable material. You would bend the lead to fit the piece and get it just how you want according to the pattern. And then once you have it, we'll say right here you have 2 or more pieces of lead that meet up. You would then take a soldering iron and you take some solder, which I believe is comprised of tin and lead. You would heat it up at a very hot temperature, around like 360 degrees or so, and you would just dab a little on that joint and make a little sort of pillow shape, and that would seal the lead to each other, and that is what gives a stained glass window its structure. So you look at all these black lines, that is all the lead used within the window, at least the narrow. We have some bigger shapes here, which might actually be glass. But you can tell a lot of lead, a lot of solder would have been needed to put this window together. And that's only for the front side. Now the lead works front and back, but you'd have to solder the back side too. However, and this is where this window begins to fall apart, there are some shapes that are near impossible to do due to the nature of glass. So let's take a look at this shape here. You see that? We looked at this hand earlier, and we see the thumb here pointing, and it protrudes really far into this piece of glass. Now this line right here, where the tip of the thumb points towards this leg line, that is very unlikely to survive any sort of building or movement. That is just a break in the piece of glass waiting to happen. So, that being said, let's take a look at some other areas of the window and see if there's more of that. For the most part, it's pretty structurally sound. We have a sort of square corner here. That's a little difficult to work with, but not impossible. Oh, here's a great example. So this piece right here next to Tyrene's right hand. This is a large piece of glass with a lot of weak points. We have another tip there, and one here at her thumb. Now that's just multiple spots that could break at any given moment. And so that is not wise to produce a window with shapes like that. What you could do is simply add a leg line right here, connect it to there, do the same here, and the same there. It would break this up into multiple different pieces, but you greatly reduce the risk of that piece breaking at any given moment. We have another piece here against that bullet. That is so narrow, that's not even going to work, no matter how hard you try. But yeah, a lot of those. I could be reading into this wrong. It's possible that these bullets are maybe painted onto the glass. That could be cool. But other than that, a lot of these larger geometric shapes, they do seem to be structurally sound, and so I gotta give them credit for that. As for the glass used, there are a handful of different glass manufacturers that exist. As far as where they got glass on Pandora, that's a really interesting question. Because from the time I've spent on this planet, there have not been any stained glass studios or stained glass manufacturers that I've come across. So, that's something I'll have to keep an eye out for. But overall, so yeah. This is a fascinating piece of stained glass art. Rather large. As you can see, I'm standing at about eye level here. We have the bottom here. If I jump as high as I can only get to about halfway. The framing system on this window is interesting. It looks like it's very durable, very strong, so I don't think this window is going to fall apart due to the frames at anytime soon. As far as structure, I don't know, let me see if I can throw something at it. Is there a gun around here? Oh, I can go grab a gun here. Alright, we're gonna do what everyone wishes they could do when they see a stained glass window. Okay, I see what's going on here. So, another fun fact about glass. When you go to a lot of buildings, a lot of, like, office skyscrapers or things like that, a lot of times their windows are tempered glass. And for those of you who don't know, tempered glass is just glass that is heated up and cooled down rapidly multiple times. They do this to give it some sort of stronger chemical bond, and that makes the glass more durable, able to withstand any sort of damage. And so because I can shoot, and nothing happens, I am inclined to believe that this glass has been properly insulated and is covered with a pane of tempered glass. Now, that would mean that this window is unbelievably heavy. So that would explain why these frames are so thick. As for where it's hanging from, I can't quite get a grip on that. It does look like it's part of this structure behind it, so I think that makes a lot of sense because this is an area. Hi, robot. I hope you enjoyed that. Anyway, that makes sense that they would insulate it like this because this is a very dangerous sort of area with a lot of gun violence, a lot of explosions, a lot of things in that nature. So to preserve your art, you're going to want to give it every sort of protection you can. But yeah, in conclusion, this is a fascinating piece of stained glass art. There are a few issues that I have with this in terms of believability and realism, but I think it's pretty. I also don't think the light diffuses through it properly, but that's a whole realm of technology in its own. So, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something from it. I really do like stained glass art, and I will probably make this a theme of future videos since a handful of games like to do it. So, be sure to like and subscribe for more future video game art videos, and thank you again for tuning in.